Call Me By Your Name is directed by Luca Guadagnino and stars Timothy Chalamet and Armie Hammer. It is a story of young love, shot in the beautiful city of Crema in the Lombardy region in northern Italy. Call Me By Your Name is at least as interested in its characters, style and setting as it is interested in its plot. The film is focused on 17-year-old Elio and his emerging sexuality. It is about the complications of identity, cultural, sexual, and the transitory nature of youth and love. This movie had a lot to love. It has some really stylish moments and some really powerful emotional moments. Its languid, wandering style worked well at times when it matched Elio's calm observations of the world and his gradual discovery of his feelings. But for long stretches, particularly throughout the middle half, it felt like we were just treading water without really developing Elio or his connection with Oliver. The slow pace introduced the setting and the characters well, but this pace never built up enough momentum to really make me feel the central romance of the film. At least not for me until it was too late. After over an hour of this pacing, when key moments in Elio and Oliver's relationship occur, they rang a little hollow, or at least a little quiet. These moments that should have been, big and glorious and emotional, felt like most of the things in this movie nice, interesting, but with no real risks or rewards at stake, and so no real impact to them. So this brings me to the main thing that I felt was missing in this movie: stakes. There are no barriers to the Elio Oliver love story. This is not Romeo and Juliet, whose families are at war. Elio has no such barriers or problems to overcome, and as such, the stakes here are far lesser. Now, I'm sure this is intentional. Guadagnino isn't trying to make an action and conflict-fueled drama. But for me, without enough emotional stakes, emotional or political stakes, I didn't get as invested in Elio's story as I did in, say, those other characters. The late-stage turns were well-written, well-acted, and therefore pretty effective, but I didn't feel the full tear-inducing gut punch that others seem to have felt. Such a young man left with an open, positive life ahead of him is hard to feel much sadness or loss for. When his father gives that great speech towards the end, we feel more for him than we do for Elio, as his is a story of actual conflict and loss. If Elio himself had married or had moved back to an oppressive part of his home country, USA, we would feel that same pain for him. But as it is, I didn't feel as much for him as I was seemingly meant to. In its defense, it's simply not that kind of film, though. Call Me By Your Name is about the transitory nature of young, pure love, not about some terrible, dramatic loss due to social oppression or homophobia. It's just not that political a movie. Call Me By Your Name is about a smaller, milder subject. And so it felt smaller and milder to me than a movie like Ang Lee's Brokeback Mountain. Comparisons with Brokeback Mountain and Moonlight seem a bit basic. All they really have in common is that kind of surface level plot about gay romance. But to try and figure out why I preferred those, I do want to compare them a bit. In each of Brokeback and Moonlight, the stakes were higher, as I say. Our protagonists were not free, but constrained by some external forces. In Moonlight, those external forces were, difficult parentage, the setting, and the protagonist's kind of associated self-worth. In Brokeback, characters were constrained by the political, societal, and therefore psychological oppression and repression. Call Me By Your Name, by contrast, has none of those social issues. It is a simpler, freer, more European, but also for me, and for these reasons, a milder, less impactful movie of less consequence. Elio, like many 17-year-olds, is a coolly detached young man. He's often seen leaning back, separated from other people, observing them from behind his sunglasses. Guadagnino depicts his protagonist as a largely blank canvas, cruising through space and time, and gradually discovering what elements he is to be composed of. Now, this is an interesting idea, but it is perhaps another reason I didn't deeply connect with Elio. I never quite felt I knew what he was thinking or feeling in the way that if I was to really feel his fall into love with Oliver, I'd need to. In making him this detached observer of the world, Guadagnino also somewhat detaches Elio from the audience. Because of this, as I say, I often felt a bit lost and a bit bored through the middle patches of the movie. Another reason I didn't feel his connection with Oliver might be because of his many other passions in the movie. Passions going in different directions. Elio has love for so many things. Books, pianos, Marzia, even fruit. That the climactic love scene with Oliver felt less impactful than it could have been. Say, if he were a lonelier figure with fewer passions, the significance of Oliver in his life might have been more effective. I mean, that complaint seems pretty simple-minded, but when I try to figure out the reasons I didn't quite get into the central romance, this does feel like one. So Call Me By Your Name might have worked better for me if it was less cool and free and more focused.